And next we have async. Async was introduced by HTML5. It actually came after defer, which we're going to see next, but I want to first talk about async. Remember that our JavaScript files are synchronous? Well, the async attribute, it signals to the browser to load JavaScript asynchronously. Basically, it's telling the browser to fetch the script when resources become available, as opposed to just pausing the HTML parsing completely. Let's now look at what this looks like. Our HTML parser begins parsing our file line by line. But this is the cool thing with async. It doesn't pause the parsing when the file is being fetched. The browser can do this with additional resources in the background. From previous examples, you would have seen that when the browser hits that script tag, it blocks the browser from doing its thing. In other words, it stops the browser from becoming responsive and usable. So, by adding this async attribute, we avoid this problem altogether. The browser can still run separate processes in the background, like fetching files. We're going to see this shortly. So that's async. Let's get back into it. It's only during the execution phase that the parser will completely stop. And once that execution is finished, obviously it can continue parsing the document, and then the DOM content loaded event can fire. Although this casualness in running your code seems pretty awesome, you must realize that your scripts marked as async will not always run in order. So what this means is that you could have a case where several scripts marked with async will run in an order that's different than what they were specified in your markup. The only guarantee we have when we mark our JavaScript files with async is that they will start running at some mysterious point before the load event gets fired. So bear in mind, some of these async scripts can actually be executed before the DOM content loaded event fires and also after the DOM content loaded event fires. This is an important point to grasp. Now I want us to look at async. And let's just start at exactly the same page that we had before. But now we're not placing JavaScript at the bottom, are we? So now we're using the async attribute. And the h1 header, we can just say, this is using the async. And using async is incredibly simple. All we have to do is add an attribute called boom 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 async. Very intuitive, right? So all we have to do is go to our external script tags and we need to add the word async. And there you go. This signals to the browser that it must fetch those resources in the background, preload them, so when our code is ready to execute them, they are there. That's all that async does. And remember, it can start at any time from when the parser first starts parsing your HTML all the way to the load event. Okay, this is what async does. So let's see, what would you expect to happen here? Well, let's find out. Let's load our page. And what's awesome is that our external 1 JavaScript file has worked because the heading 2 tag is red, and our external 2 file has worked because the h3 tag is blue. So that's very cool. Now, before we expect our console log, I want you to think about what you would expect to happen. So let's go back to our file. What would you expect to happen? Well, remember what the async does? The async is for non-critical scripts. We're trying to improve our CRP process, our critical rendering path process. And adding this async attribute tells the browser it can fetch the files in the background, and when it has spare capacity, it can execute those files. So you have no control on exactly when it's going to be executed. But here it will place these as lower priority than the other scripts in your document. For example, you see the inline scripts, the console log inline 1 and console log inline 2 and console log inline 3. Well, because we've added async, I would expect those inline console logs to be displayed first. And only after that's done will the async scripts get executed. So let's see if that occurred. I hope I'm right, otherwise it's going to be awkward.
Well, this is awkward.
So let's inspect the document. And let's go to the console, inline 1, inline 2, inline 3, and then external 1 and external 2. Exactly what I was just expecting. So at least that's all working as expected. Now let's assess the performance again. And again, let's start profiling and reloading this page. Let's wait. And here we go. Then we zoom in on the area of importance. And now we can start searching for those events, right? We can go into event log and we can look for the DOM content loaded event. And how long has it taken now? Well, that's right, 154.3 milliseconds. And what about our paint? Well, let's look at our paint. It's the second paint here. Again, you can't see it because I'm in the way. Let me just remove myself. There you go. You can see that the second paint is the one that has both the red and the blue text. So we know all our JavaScript has been executed. Well, how long has that taken? Well, that's taken 225.4 milliseconds. Remember this number. And the last one that we want to look at is the load event. And here we can see that it's taken 273 milliseconds, 273.8 milliseconds. And I know it's just been cut off on the screen there a little bit, but you're just going to have to trust me that that's exactly what it is. So again, remember this number.